Hello and good evening, if it's evening for you. It is for me. And just wanted to do my update because obviously now we are in Eternal Lands. So, the last time that I checked in with you guys, we were still in the prep stages. And I did want to show just a little bit to show you that we've been kind of busy. So it's actually amazing. 80% of this was done yesterday already. So it just really shows that it's an awesome team just to see the kind of coordination and teamwork that goes into that. Obviously, you can see that we do have 3 alliances that are mixed in here that we are overlapping. So some people have asked about how overlapping works because it's one of those things that's hard to tell. And you can see here that basically when you're building and you leave these gaps, the gaps will allow other alliances to interweave, almost like a basket weave or a checkerboard pattern, is how some people will show it. Apologies, by the way, you can totally probably hear my traffic. I do have my window open right now. Lovely Canadian spring weather is starting to come around. But yeah, you can see the way that things interlock here to allow this to go. We have an excellent team here that has planned out a whole strategy. So as crazy as this looks, everything is going to plan and will continue to move to plan as we move into the next zones. Again, unfortunately, when I look at some of the people who are around us, one thing with this new map, which we'll talk a little bit more about this new map in a moment, is it really allows you to see kind of the progress that everybody else has made. So this is actually a lot more filled in than it was the last time that I checked, which is awesome to see that people are filling in. But yeah, it's kind of nice that you can use this to really sort of see how things are going. I definitely like this view. Is one of the things that I am a fan of with this new map. There's one or two things, I definitely like it in theory. There are one or two things that I feel, to use the top war term, could perhaps be optimized. One of them being is that I wish it didn't zoom out quite so fast. Like, I really wish I could zoom out to about there and still have the map, partially because as soon as you start to zoom out, not sure if you've seen, but it makes it more difficult to use some of the search functions. And also for power station placing, to be honest. I would really prefer to be zoomed out to about this far when I'm placing power stations, just to be able to see the entire power station in one screen. Because as soon as you get to about there, the power station disappears. And so I think that is going to end up getting a little bit challenging. And that, just before, hang on, I'm going to get distracted here. I am going to try and keep myself actually, and this is the other thing, is that I do find it a little more difficult to click on some of these buttons. But yeah, just to very quickly go over the map, if you hadn't noticed, there's a couple of different areas of how much you're able to see. So when you're in, this is sort of what I call the first zoom out. You are still able to see your, refineries and barns, and I don't have any around me right now, but I do know that in this particular mode, you're able to see weakening towers. So in terms of strategy, if you have ever been the person who is constantly checking the border to make sure that the enemy is, not encroaching on your borders, that's going to be something that honestly is going to make that job a little bit easier. You're going to be able to see a little bit more at a glance, all of that going on. Although I guess it's really not that much different than when you could zoom out from, those kinds of views. And then as soon as you go out, that little bit much further, here I'm still able to see power stations and still able to see buildings. So that's kind of nice to be able to see those. I can see my own base, but I'm not seeing anybody else's base. but it does still give me a pretty decent view. And then of course, when we zoom out entirely again, we get to this view here. As of right now, we've got the two similar but slightly different color coding on these zones. I assume as we move out into the other areas that we will start to see different colors on there as well. So that is one of the things. But yes, while I was just kind of poking around at a couple of things, thinking about what I might talk to you guys about today, I noticed something, which actually I was a little bit late on it, which just goes to show that I think I was maybe not paying attention to this side of things as much as I may have in previous Eternal Lands. But this power station, so one of the things in the very first Eternal Lands that I did, we were actually zone locked into our zone 1 for pretty much about a week. And we got as much as we were zone locked, we were actually fighting against the server that zone locked us pretty much every day. And the reason how we would do this is we did a lot of fighting over the mountains, because one of the things that I noticed is in this new map now, these mountains are twice as thick as they used to be. So this is going to make this particular strategy for people a lot more challenging. Someone pointed out that you can see here by the gates, the size of the previous mountains were, basically like that. And when I go, and I did save this here, so this was a video that I had taken a screen recording of that I did in one of the previous Eternal Lands, just to sort of show this. So if you're looking here, you can see that, what you could do is, depending on where you placed it, right here in this spot, you used to be able to actually get a 2x2 square, so you could fit one large base or 4 small bases in zone 2 or zone 3, depending on which mountain we're talking about, with your power station actually on your side of the mountains. So how this worked strategy-wise is that you could basically use this as a base that for that first week when your enemy was not able to go into your zone 1, they would not be able to touch this power station, but it would give you a spot that someone could port into zone 2, and for one, they could hit the dark forces that were in zone 2 and get those higher point dark forces was one of the key things that we did use it for. The other thing was that you could use that as a place that you could kind of build off of. And then also what I'm showing here in this video is that you could place power stations like this. There we go. You could place power stations like this, which would touch the enemy's power station while they were on the other side of there. So let's say I was this yellow team right here. In this particular situation, I could place a power station like this, and I would be able to attack this power station that's in the upper right-hand corner here, without the while this server that's in zone 2 would not be able to hit my power station. So one of the things that partly because I became very good at being, the yellow team, is it made me very aware of it when in later Eternal Lands I was, the server who was in zone 2, to be aware of my borders, because it's two things. Honestly, if you want the fight, if you are, looking for that opportunity, you can place yourself a little bit closer and kind of dare the people who are in zone 1 to go ahead and hit you. If you're confident in it and you want the kills, that's one thing that can be done. The other thing, really, if you are that person who's locked in zone 1 and you want to be a little bit of a pest about it, for us, my strategy, if I'm being honest, was that we had allies who were on the other side of the map, and our job, so to speak, was to continue to fight the server that was next to us, to basically wear them out, to make them train troops, to make them use gems. Meanwhile, we had people on the other side of the map who were not being affected by this at all. So that was one of the things that we did. Sorry, excuse me one moment here. So that was one of the things that we did to, do that. And we honestly did it quite effectively. And we had these little border skirmishes, as I called them, for basically an entire week, even while we were in Zone 1. And by the time it was time for that particular server to fight other servers, when the capital city opened, they had already spent thousands and, hundreds of thousands of gems and had used a lot of their Valhalla troops, and all of that had already been done when they were facing a fresh enemy who, to be honest, hadn't been doing all of that. So that was part of our strategy in that particular Eternal Lands. And then to go back here, you can see that as I move this along the mountain, it is pretty much impossible for me to build this in a way that it is overlapping entirely. Now, I did take a look, and, theoretically, you are still going to get those places where they touch. So if I, add a power station here, and you can see that there is also a power station, on this side. If someone had this power station, they would be able to attack from this side of the mountains and burn this power station without me being able to hit this power station on this side. So that is still a viable strategy, which if you are, looking to, if someone has locked you into your Zone 1, or if you are just looking to perhaps set up an easier defense where you don't really want to have to worry about that particular server, I would encourage you to, set it like this, or set your power stations up in a way that they're not going to be able to touch, because at the end of the day, having that little bit of space, you're going to make them, you always want to be on the offense, right? And you want to put your opponent on the defense when it comes to Eternal Land strategy. And so you want them, sure, why not give my enemy, about an inch or two of space where it's just enough space that they think, let me go ahead and put this here. And then that way, you are attacking them rather than them being on this side, attacking your power station and putting you on the defense. Right? If your power station was here and you had this touch here, they're going to be attacking your power station. You're going to have to defend this power station here. Which, again, with the weakening towers being the way that they are now, they're only working on the defense. But even still, it's, you're still kind of working at your disadvantage. Whereas if you make it so that, your power station is here and your enemy has to place another power station, right about where that 26 kilometer, pretend that was another power station. If you make your enemy do that, then you are attacking them. They have to play defense to try to get that power station built. So for an effective defensive strategy, if you want to have it kind of be easier as opposed to more difficult, just kind of pay attention to that as you're starting to build out into Zone 2, that you are making sure that you do that, especially if you know that you are up against someone who is going to try to fight back. And if you are that person who perhaps, is in a Zone 1, and let's say you're facing somebody who is about equal strength to you, or somebody who's maybe a little bit on the stronger side than you, but who that, eventually you may be able to, fight, or you might just have to wait for the right moment to do it. Just be aware of how those borders can work, because I have seen it happen, and I've been in the Eternal Lands where people just kind of assume and they go, well, I am locked into my Zone 1, so I guess that's the end of Eternal Lands for me. And I will tell you, we went from being locked into our Eternal Lands to we traveled in the ends from our Zone 1 all the way to the capital city. And we did it in about 24 hours after we finally managed to make ourselves out. And that was the Eternal Lands that we essentially ended up basically tying first place with that server right next to us in the end. because once we were able to break out and get out, we really were the two strongest servers in the end, in that particular Eternal Lands. And so that ended up being our results. So don't give up, I guess what I'm saying. And even if you aren't, in my opinion, we only get this event, every 3 or 4 months. I was chatting with some friends about how I love the of action and events, and I really encourage you guys, if you do happen to be in a server, because it seems that a lot of these matchups really do have those 1 or 2 stronger servers and others that are not. I encourage you to consider ways that you can still, have yourself a little bit of challenge. At the end of the day, people are at least going to get some points for kills that way, right? And you never know, you just might make yourself some new friends. You might make some new allies. You don't know how that particular thing is going to go, but it's an opportunity that a lot of people don't realize, is that there are a couple of different strategies that you can do. And even with these thicker mountains, you just kind of still have to tweak it, right? To know exactly how you are going to work those. Here, again, and the other thing that and now I'm really starting to give away secrets here, but if you can't build, hang on a second, I'm gonna have to do it this way. If you can't build a power station and cross the mountains, but if you have a fort, so if you find just the right spot, because the fort actually gives you more space, but you got to have some space around it. So this is what I encourage you to do, is play around. And this is the kind of thing that you can do now already. And you can find these spots on the mountains and kind of, bookmark the chords and know exactly where they're at. But I will bet, no, these are all getting too close. But just because you get more width out of it, so again, you can use these forts to stretch that little bit further. They really made these mountains thick, didn't they? So that's going to be about as close. I'd have to go all the way up and down the mountains, because I'll bet there might be one spot that I could build a fort and get a 1x1 square, unless they purposely avoided doing that. But I don't know if I can get this fort right next to the mountain. Play around with it. If anybody does manage to succeed with this strategy, or has any experience or any other tips with using this particular strategy, please feel free to let me know. Leave a comment below. I assume that most people who are watching these videos at this point have my Discord, but feel free to send me a message if there's something that you would like me to talk about with regards to this strategy or any other strategy. When it comes to Eternal Lands, please do let me know, because I think that really this is the stuff that I love, and this is the reason why I love Eternal Lands, is because it does allow you to have these opportunities. But that is about it. So I wanted to touch base with that, because we're in now kind of that lull, right, where everybody is just, farming their asses off, for lack of a better term, gathering up all of that amethyst, making sure, that they're ready for the next stages, and hopefully making plans. And so I wanted to throw that tip out there, because sometimes this is a stage where people, kind of throw up their hands and say, well, what am I going to be able to do once this opens? Is there anything left for me to do? And so going into, it's going to be about a week before Capital opens, before anybody can take over your Zone 1. And I really do encourage you, if you are somebody who ends up being in a situation where perhaps you find it difficult to get out into Zone 2, right off the hop. Just know that the game doesn't have to end right on that first day. And there are different things that you can do and incorporate into whatever strategy you might be using against the server that is next to you here, or, servers to come and servers that will eventually, that you will be facing in the future. So, like I said, if anybody has any comments, suggestions, if there's any other questions that you have about Eternal Lands in general or the game in general that you would like me to talk about, sometimes I find it hard to figure out things to talk about in these, so I definitely would love to hear from people that way. And that is it for now. I will see you maybe tomorrow, maybe the day after. Bye.